All right, so today we have my good friend Hagai Lupesco, who is now SVP of AI Inference at Cerebras Systems. And you can find this at cerebras.ai/inference. So the taglines are the world's fastest inference available today. Cerebras Inference Llama 3.3 70 billion runs at, I guess, 70x faster than GPU clouds. So, Hagai, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey Ben, awesome to be here. Thanks for having me again.
All right. So, Cerebras Inference, I take at face value the numbers, but I guess let's quickly explain to listeners briefly. I think a lot of people have heard of Cerebras. That is this wafer style uh, chip, and it makes sense on paper that it's faster. But maybe you can give us like a quick, rapid tour of the basics of Cerebras, why it's fast, and why it's fast specifically for inference. So let's focus this discussion on inference.
Yeah, sounds great. Awesome. So just for some background, Cerebras is a startup, still a private company, founded about 9 years ago by five folks: Andrew Feldman, Gary Lauterbach, Michael James, Sean Lien, JP Freaker. Andrew is now the CEO, and Sean, one of the co-founders, is the CTO. And when they started the company, they kind of, they had an interesting observation. They observed, and they were right, that deep learning or deep and large neural networks are gaining a lot of momentum, and they kind of bet that it's going to be the future of AI. Another observation they had was that the accelerator used back then and still used today were actually designed for something else. That's graphic processing. That's the GPUs, right? Designed for graphics processing, for shading, computer video games, things like that. Now, we were all lucky that these GPUs were really good at highly parallel vector math, matrix multiplication. But there are other things where they're not necessarily were really good for neural networks. So these guys who started Cerebras tried to rethink that approach and really design an accelerator that from the ground up would be a great fit for deep learning.
And if I can inject, so I was around the early days of Cerebras, and I can tell you the pushback and resistance to that original idea, the idea of the wafer,
Yeah.
because basically there were old school, old heads in the semiconductor industry who said, "We tried this before, it didn't work."
Yes. So there was multiple attempts previously to generate a chip that would be very large. And I think the company Cerebras probably spent at least the first few years of the company just making it actually work. The main challenge was yield because, as you know, folks in the semiconductor space knows, I mean, there's no perfect process for a silicon manufacturing. There's always defects. And then when you're manufacturing smaller chips, it's okay to suffer some yield issues because you can just, throw some of these chips, or you can even kind of downgrade them and sell them as lower capacity hardware. But when the chip is the entire wafer, that obviously becomes a challenge. So there are a bunch of interesting engineering solutions the Cerebras team came up with. I'm not going to dive into it here. That's a whole separate podcast session, I think. Listeners who are interested, there is a fantastic blog post at the Cerebras website. You can read about how Cerebras solved the yield problem, but definitely it was a hard problem. Other problems came after that. The chip is very large. So how do you actually package it? How do you put it in a box? How do you cool it? How do you provide enough energy to it? How do you make it stable, running long computation? Those are all hardware, physical, mechanical challenges that the company
And I was
encountered.
around for the first generation of the chips. I held it, and I saw the first uh, servers, which were very impressive. The cooling system was very interesting. Um, yeah. So
Yeah. Actually, let me quickly share my screen just for the folks who may be watching us on YouTube, just to kind of show what we're talking about. So this image here shows the chip. That's actually a very large chip. It's again, it's a whole wafer, and it packs a lot of compute. So 4 trillion transistors, 900,000 AI cores. It has 125 petaflops of AI compute and 44 gigabytes of on-chip memory. That's static RAM, SRAM. We'll get to it in a bit when we talk about how come Cerebras is so fast for inference, because that's one of the key things, packaging a lot of SRAM on the silicon itself. This is another interesting image, just shows, the Cerebras WSE3, that's the latest generation of the wafer or the accelerator, versus, I think the image here is an H100. So that's the difference in size. Now, important to mention, H100 is also, when it's manufactured out of a whole wafer. Only the H100 chip is cut off from the big wafer. That's actually why a chip is called a chip, because you chip it off the wafer. And then last, just there's the accelerator itself on the left, and then we're packaging it into a box. That's the CS3, the Cerebras system. And then we're actually packaging multiple of these systems together into a cluster. Our typical cluster today is 64 WSC, so wafers and 64 systems. But of course, the size can vary. But these are interconnected together with Ethernet.
If you go back to your previous slide, you missed one thing here, which the superpower of the GPU, which is CUDA.
Correct. Yes. I think, and I think probably you think as well as many others, that the real strength of NVIDIA is not the hardware itself, but actually the software that was built throughout more than 10 years, I think, at this point, that there's a whole ecosystem around. I completely agree.
And if ROCm, AMD ROCm ever gets better, and it's slowly getting better, maybe that will, at least on the GPU side, there'll be more options for people.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hagai, Cerebras Inference, right? So
Yeah.
I think in the early days of Cerebras, we associated Cerebras with training.
Correct.
So now you folks have specifically stood up an inference group. So who is the target audience for Cerebras Inference, first of all?
Yeah. So again, just to take a step back for the listeners, end of August last year, 2024, we launched a new product, Cerebras Inference. As you're correctly highlighting, Cerebras focused more on training until that time. And I think just the market dynamics that we're all aware of, where a lot of the AI workloads are moving from training to inference. And personally, I don't think that training workloads are diminishing. I just think that inference workloads are growing in an exponential rate at this point. And I expect, inference workloads to actually dwarf training workloads in the next, within a few years.
So would you, so there's inference, pure inference, but there's the larger topic of post-training, which might
Correct.
include fine-tuning, distillation. So is this part of Cerebras Inference as well?
Cerebras Inference focusing on inference. Sometimes it includes components of post-training. For example, distillation involves sometimes synthetic data generation, so you use inference for that. Also, in some of the RL methods, you're using a reward model that verifies or ranks responses. That's also done with inference. So those are components. But the actual part where you're updating model weights, etc., that's still under the training regime, and that's handled through our training product.
And so again, who is the target audience for Cerebras Inference?
Yeah. So the target audience is basically any company, organization out there that has the needs of fast, blazingly fast inference. Now, I'm highlighting fast inference because that's actually the main differentiator and really the unique value proposition of Cerebras Inference. It's anywhere between 10 times or to 70 times faster than inference built on GPUs, usually NVIDIA GPUs. As someone, so personally, we didn't talk about my background, but, I worked previously at Meta AI, AWS, Mosaic ML, then Databricks. And I actually built
that last
my
company
team.
is especially interesting.
All of them are very interesting. All of them are fantastic companies.
Yeah.
But I would say that, wherever I was and with my team, we worked hard building these inference products. We had a ceiling above our head. That's the capability of the NVIDIA GPU. And actually, all of our competitors had the same ceiling. And even with the best software optimizations, you're kind of bounded by that ceiling provided by the hardware.
So
And
just
also,
to
yeah,
just to clarify, right? So you said anyone who needs fast inference,
yeah.
but essentially that's everyone. So are you saying any of our listeners can go to cerebras.ai/inference, swipe a credit card, and get going right now?
We're still not supporting credit card swiping, but
Yeah.
you'll talk to a salesperson and we will get you a default contract. Our focus is at this point more on enterprises than sort of the individual developers. Although I would say that today on our platform, which was launched just August of last year, like I said, we now have 100,000 developers with access to the platforms who are using it with, for kind of varying application, although with fairly limiting rate limits, I would say. And then at this point, we have, I'd say, triple digit number of customers who have signed agreements with us. So those are enterprise agreements where they're using our fast inference for various use cases from healthcare through financial applications to different agentic applications. There's really a kind of a very broad variety. Now, I would say
It's 70x faster. Is it 70x more expensive?
no, the price is, I'd say we are competitive with a bunch of other services, although we're certainly not the cheapest.
Okay.
Let me actually show just to talk about the speed and also explain how come it's so fast. So for viewers who can see what I'm sharing, this is a screenshot from Artificial Analysis. Artificial Analysis is an independent third-party website that measures different LLMs and as well as other AI models in terms of performance, quality, and other interesting characteristics. It's a very useful website, and if you haven't had the chance to check it out, go to Artificial Analysis online and check it out. Now, what we're seeing here is a comparison of API providers for the Open Llama 3.3 70B model. This slide here shows token generation speed, time per output token. Cerebras today, as measured by that external website, that's not us, that's that other independent provider, has 2,314 tokens per second. Yeah, that's over 2,000 tokens per
Let me
second.
ask you this. So a lot of these other um, uh, platforms that you're displaying here are using GPUs, right? So what
Correct.
about are there uh, comps with like TPUs or other ASIC?
I don't believe TPUs are there. I do think artificial analysis is comparing to other ASIC providers. Cerebras is still the fastest by far compared to all of those. Yeah. Now, what we're
I
seeing
guess
here,
Amazon has Inferentia or whatever it is, their chip.
yeah, well, we don't know what specifically is powering Amazon in this chart. So again,
Yeah.
just for the listeners who can see the image, Amazon here is, and I believe that's Amazon Bedrock, is at 32 tokens per second, 32. So that's 70 times slower than Cerebras.
So Hagai, can you give a high level short elevator pitch as to why it's faster? Why? Not
Yeah,
not
before we get there, I'll just
yeah.
the other just data point I'll show is also the latency. The time to the first token
Mhm.
is also Cerebras is leading 170 millisecond, and then the others are of course much slower. But okay, so the interesting question is how come, and the answer is really the hardware is what makes the big difference. So you can see the image here. It actually maybe I'll take a step back and give a quick background. So when you're doing autoregressive generation with LLMs or any other transformer-based model, if I really dumb down the process, you need to load the parameters of a specific layer into the compute cores, compute a lot of matrix multiplication to get the output of that layer, and then go back to the memory, pull the next set of parameters of that layer, and repeat the multiplication. And you go that across all the layers or all the transformer blocks in the model. Now, on a typical GPU, because the most of the memory resides outside of the silicon on what's called HBM, high bandwidth memory, that
Mhm.
term is actually a bit misleading because it's not high bandwidth. It's actually the limiting factor for LLM. Now, the funny fact is the GPU packs a lot of compute, but that compute is actually mostly idle in autoregressive generation because most of the time is spent just fetching parameters from the HBM into the compute core doing the multiplication. So that's what's limiting GPUs. And that's why, again, the memory bandwidth is the limiting factor. Even if you pack more compute into a typical
Yeah,
GPU,
that's been apparent from the beginning of LLMs, right?
yes, exactly. And that goes back to the point I mentioned earlier where GPUs were not really designed for deep and large neural networks. They were designed for something else. We're just lucky that we're really good at matrix multiplication because that's what shading required.
And
Now, if you look at the,
no matter what NVIDIA does to improve networking, right? So
yeah, correct.
interconnects, this is always going to
So
be a limiting factor.
for inference, exactly, yes. Unless, of course, NVIDIA or the other, would actually adopt a whole new hardware architecture paradigm. But there's a challenge in doing that, and that goes to the advantage we discussed earlier of CUDA. Now, if
Mhm.
you adopt a whole new hardware architecture paradigm, you break compatibility with your software stack. So
Exactly.
anyway, if we look at the right in this diagram, we're seeing this Cerebras Wafer-Scale engine that packs, like I mentioned earlier, 44 gigabytes of static RAM on the silicon itself. That's, I think, almost 1,000 times more than an H100, and
But
even more so,
to be fair, that's not enough to load the really large models. Right?
that's correct, and
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that is really useful at the Cerebras WSC is that the static RAM is also co-located across that very large wafer close to the compute cores. So a typical autoregressive generation on Cerebras wafer, you don't need to go to the external memory to load the parameters. They're already there, and they're also very close to the compute cores, and that's how we get so much faster inference.
And
Now, you're pointing out that
what happens when your model is too big for one wafer?
yeah. So for large models where you can't fit all the parameters on a single wafer, Cerebras implemented pipeline parallelism, which is also, by the way, a technique also used with GPUs for very large models. And in that approach, we actually split the layers across multiple wafers, so they all fit in the static RAM, and the generation just follows from one wafer to the other. Now, that actually does not reduce the speed of the token generation because it's pipeline parallelism. So every
So
given
so the
cycle
plane,
you have, yeah,
so very roughly speaking, Hagai, in that case, when you have to split across a few wafers, the expectation is you still get kind of that 30 to 70x speed up because the GPUs also will have that problem anyway because the model is so massive, right?
correct. Yes. So yeah, because it's pipeline parallelism, which means at every given point of time, all of the wafers are fully busy computing the token they're handling at that point, the speed remains the same. Of course, if you pack up more and more WSCs, your latency, the time to first token, may suffer a little bit, but the token generation speed would still be just as fast.
So I'm a user of multiple families of foundation models, right? So there's Anthropic, there's OpenAI, Google Gemini, the Llama family, the DeepSeek family, now the Qwen family, right?
Mhm.
So what models actually run on Cerebras today? They're only the open weights models, right?
No, so some of our customers have their own custom private models. So we recently announced our partnership with Mistral. So today, Cerebras actually powers Mistral Leshat, which is Mistral's assistant product. It has a nice UI, kind of comparable, I say, to ChatGPT. Very popular in Europe. We're powering that, and it's been a fantastic partnership so far, and that got a lot of very
A-
positive PR.
And how what
Um,
so if let's take that example, right? So if I have a new model like Mistral or I don't know, just DeepSeek V7, how
mhm.
quickly can I make it run on Cerebras? Because out of
Yeah,
the, because I'm basically probably when I'm building this model, I'm targeting NVIDIA GPUs, right?
correct. So, unless you're doing something really drastically different, as long as you're within the regime of standard GPT style transformer models with or without MOEs and some of the other standard components, within days you can have your model running. It's kind of similar, I'd say, to NVIDIA's TRT LLM. We have also a compiler. Currently, that compiler is not publicly available, but for our customers who provide model architectures, we use this compiler to onboard their models. So it's fairly fast. And again, we have a fairly extensive tooling internally, which includes compilers, optimization profiling, things like that, that allows us to onboard new models very quickly. I'll go back to your question in terms of models. So we have Mistral models running. We have private model from Perplexity. So again, that's another partnership that was announced, I believe, last week, where we are powering Perplexity's private model. It's called Sonar. It was a model that is based on Llama, I believe, but was fine-tuned and adapted to perform really well on search tasks. And by the way, the Perplexity, that product is fantastic. And if you haven't tried it out, I recommend trying it out because it's a really provides a really different search experience compared to Google search. So that's also powered by Cerebras. And then beyond that, we have DeepSeek, we have the Llama family of models, and we're always open to onboard new models. It's really for us a question of the business opportunity and the demand.
But this is this something that the teams will need your help to do? Just to clarify, or is this can they do this themselves?
If it's a standard model that is already available on our platform, like the Llama family of models or DeepSeek or Mistral family of models, then they just need to sign up and they sign a contract with us and they get access. If it's a proprietary model, either standard architecture with their own weights or a new architecture, yes, they need to work with us to get onboarded.
And so if it's a standard open weights models that they happen to fine tune, that should be easy to
Correct. That's
get
very
running.
easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Within
so
30 minutes, I believe we can onboard them.
So inference was important and now even more important because of the rise of these so-called reasoning enhanced models, which I
Yeah.
believe many of our listeners are familiar with if you've used any of the latest OpenAI models or Google's latest Gemini models are also reasoning enhanced. DeepSeek R1 is reasoning enhanced. I believe the one family of Quen models from Alibaba is also reasoning enhanced. So these models are, you know, the inference is more challenging because they're thinking, I guess. They are deciding what to do. And so it becomes one slower, but I guess also more expensive, right? So what is Cerebras AI doing in light of the rise of reasoning enhanced models?
Yeah. So I think it's probably today the most exciting trend in AI today is actually everything around reasoning or inference time compute or inference scaling laws. I mean, people use different names, but it's kind of the same notion or very similar notion. And the idea is that we allow the models to spend more time thinking before giving us the response. And it's actually very intuitive. I think for each one of us, right? If we have a complex task, we'll take more time to plan, write things down, think through this before we actually come out with a plan or execute it. So I think it's very intuitive and that's very exciting. Now, the other thing to note is until just a few years ago, we were all busy with the training scaling laws, right? And I think Google's Chinchilla paper from a few years ago highlighted that really well. Basically told us that, hey, if you want to continue expanding the model capability, you need not just to grow the model size, but also to train to more data and use more compute to
Saturate,
do
yeah,
that.
saturation, right? So.
Correct. And they also shown in that paper that a lot of the leading models of the time were actually undertrained
Mhm.
because companies scaled the model parameters without scaling the amount of data. So that was really interesting. And today, we're at the point where actually continuing to scale model size and data doesn't make too much sense because of, in my view, two main reasons. I mean, the first one is that kind of we're running out of data. The latest and greatest models were trained on about 15 trillion tokens. That's like an order of magnitude more tokens every year. If we think about can we get an order of magnitude more tokens the following year to 150 trillion tokens, the internet just doesn't have enough data. The second main thing is just that serving super large models is just super expensive. Ben, sorry, I have to pause for a minute. I apologize, my son. Okay. So the second reason is just serving large models is so expensive. I mean, even a moderately sized model today, such as Llama 70B or Mistral Large 2, you need 4 to 8 H100 GPUs. That's about 100K US dollars a year. And if you're looking into the bigger models like the new DeepSeek V3 or R1, that's at least double. So we're kind of limited in our ability to continue scaling the models as well. So that's also a limiting factor. So training scaling laws, while they have room to give us better models, in fact, it's not very practical at this point. So inference scaling laws is the new interesting thing, which gives us actually an opportunity to continue increasing the model quality without really increasing the model size.
And I guess the question I go back is, do wafer style architectures hold an advantage in this world of reasoning enhanced models?
Yeah, so it does. And the main thing to kind of remember, and maybe we can dive into how reasoning works in a bit. But if you use a model like OpenAI O1 or 3 or DeepSeek R1, the new reasoning model from DeepSeek, you notice that actually the model was trained to think before it responds. And DeepSeek R1 is actually really nice because the thinking is encapsulated in thinking tokens. There's an opening bracket think and closing bracket think, which is a special tokens used when training this model. Now, the model tends to actually generate a lot of these thinking tokens, which actually increases the latency until the model is responding. So what this basically means is that if you're planning to use these models in your application, you're going to expect a very long latency, which is going to impact the user experience. And that's where super fast inference is super useful because if you're used to wait for a minute, right, in the case of O1 or O3 or DeepSeek R1 until the response comes back, with super fast inference like Cerebras inference, it's going to compress into just a few seconds. And that's where the advantage of fast inference really plays well into this new trend.
So the actual thinking and reasoning, right? So there's different techniques that people are using, right? So from tree search to some sort of reinforcement learning. Um, I guess
Yeah.
uh, tree search meaning search, right? So search-based algorithms. Maybe there's a notion of distillation as well, right? So where they look at distilled versions of the model. So
Mm-hmm.
why does having such a massive chip give me an advantage in any of those scenarios? Let's take the search-based thinking.
Yeah. Let's actually maybe talk just for a minute about one interesting approach, which is chain of thought.
Mm-hmm.
So just to explain this a bit more. So if you look at the reasoning models, they're using something called chain of thought. That was actually a notion known or coined a few years ago. Like many of the good ideas in AI, it actually came out of Google research or
Mm-hmm.
Google DeepMind. And here, for listeners who are also viewing us, there's a paper that introduced the notion of chain of thought. And just the idea here was pretty simple, right? It was If you look at the bottom left of this chart, it shows standard prompting, where you give the model a problem and just ask it to solve the problem. On the right, it shows the prompting technique that used chain of thought, as they called it, which gives the model an example of a similar question and an example answer for that question, highlighting the way this problem was solved. So in this case, it's a question, simple math question. I'd say probably elementary school grade math question. And then there is an example of an answer that actually explains to the model how to get to that solution. And that's what's called chain of thought, right? You start with 5 balls, there are 2 cans of 3 tennis balls. So this gives you a total number of, and so on and so forth. Now, what this paper shows is that simple approach of showing the model how to apply chain of thought and getting the model to apply the chain of thought when it's solving problems actually makes the model perform much better. The chart on the right is, I think, even more interesting because it shows a bunch of experiments the authors ran where they use this chain of thought prompting technique, and they use it on different flavors of the same model, only with varying sizes. And what's very clear, if you look at this chart, is that as the model become larger, actually its ability to leverage chain of thought successfully is becoming much, much better. Like if you look at the, again on the right, the GPT performance on GSM 8K, so while the smaller GPT models of 400 million parameters, 7 billion parameters improved very moderately with this approach, the larger GPT model, the one with 175 billion parameters, actually I think more than doubled the performance on math questions. And I think even probably performed 7 times better on other types of questions. So the way the authors refer to it, chain of thought is an emergent ability. So as the model actually is learning how to reason, it actually performs much better. So this is like the core idea behind reasoning. And of course, this paper is from a few years ago. Since then, there's been a lot of advancement in the field that yielded what we've seen with OpenAI o1, o3, and DeepSeek. And this is, I think, is another really interesting
Yeah, and
insight from the
most of them
point of view.
nowadays people have recognized, right? So that example you showed, in some ways, is giving examples, but it's not very robust, right? So if you
Correct.
ask it to reason on a different problem, so that's why people are starting to use things like reinforcement learning, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
and especially when you don't have a lot of labeled data, right? So let's say less than 100 examples. It seems like uh, that's where reinforcement learning can really shine. Because
Correct. Yes.
the problem with kind of the classical approach, which is similar to supervised fine tuning, is you do need these labeled examples, right? So.
Yes, that is correct. So if you look at what um, OpenAI has done, so OpenAI shared a blog post when they introduced o1. I believe it was August or September of last year. They highlighted the performance of o1, which was really fantastic and really a major improvement. They didn't tell us much about the training regime beyond mentioning that they've used RL to teach the model to reason and to think before responding. So I think that's
Now,
a very interesting approach. We recently also seen Google with Gemini 2 Flash Thinking doing the same. The one thing that is a bit disappointing is that both OpenAI and Google, they don't actually share the thinking token with users. They're actually hiding the thinking tokens. And that's probably to protect their IP, maybe I think also maybe to protect against some malicious attacks that can happen. But if you've used DeepSeek R1, and R1 is an open model, so it's great. You can actually see all the thinking tokens. And it's really incredible to give the model a hard problem and then read the thinking tokens and see how the model is actually thinking. It's almost, in a way, it's almost like getting a glimpse into the mind of a person as they're thinking through a problem. Um,
Now, I don't
so that's me personally.
want to oversell reinforcement learning because basically you still need to develop the reward model, right? And also, it seems best suited when in situations where you have the ability to verify the correctness of the output. That's why a lot of the times people use it for coding type situations because you can transpile or run the code or something like that. But in cases where you have the ability to verify the output somehow, to verify the correctness of the output, it might be a good way to go. But
Yeah.
so I guess going back, so I'm still not clear. So how does the wafer style chip help me in all of these things?
Yeah. So going back to my original point about the importance of fast inference,
Hmm.
because if you use, there's been a lot of right discussion in the internet around, OpenAI o1 or 3 being very capable, but then also being super slow. And
Mhm.
people are mentioning, and that's true. If you use these models, you can wait for a response for 10 seconds, minutes. It really depends on the complexity of the problem. Similarly with DeepSeek R1, again, when you provide the model with an input, it starts generating the output. It usually starts with thinking tokens, and the model, only when it's done thinking, it graduates to the actual answer tokens. So this is where fast inference plays an important role because it actually compresses the amount of time, the latency, until the actual answer comes out for the user. So if you're thinking about using reasoning models for practical application where there is, let's say, a human on the other side waiting for the answer, or maybe it's an agentic application where you're chaining multiple models together, speed becomes a critical factor because latency is really important. And this is where Wafer-Scale Engine, it
So
loads a transformer model, runs it, but just because it's so much faster, that's where it plays a super useful role.
so to parse what you're saying, what
Mhm.
you're saying is basically inference with these reasoning models is still inference. It's just that you are doing more inference. So you know what I mean. So you're spending more time trying to figure out what the right answer is, which is a form of inference. And so, regardless of how you think about it, it's still inference. It's the same type of math and computation is involved. So therefore, if you have a fast inference engine, you're going to go through the reasoning faster.
Exactly. That is the main thing. And maybe it's important to highlight because maybe it's not clear to everyone. These reasoning models like DeepSeek R1 or OpenAI O1 or Gemini Flash Thinking, and there are new models with reasoning coming up, and I expect we'll see more of these. They've trained to think before the answer, but it's still just regular inference. Only the model was taught to generate thinking tokens before it generates answer tokens. That's it. A lot of the complexity there is around how you train a model to reason, how you train it to generate these thinking tokens. But if you read the DeepSeek R1 paper, which is a fantastic paper, and I recommend their listeners to read it, they actually illustrate like their multi-stage post-training approach. And the first thing they did is they actually started with what they called cold start data, which is just supervised fine tuning, so instruction fine tuning, where they taught the model to generate outputs in the structure of thinking tokens and then answer tokens. And that's how they seeded the model to start thinking. After that, there were stages of RL where the model learned to think properly. And one really interesting observation or data point from that paper is as the training progressed throughout time, the model learned to think more before answering. And that is, I think, a really interesting phenomenon because the training regime itself did not force the model to think more. It forced the model to produce better output. And the way the model training responded to that is to think more before answering. And that's a really incredible insight. And again, going back to the point, so these models are generating thinking tokens. If the problem is hard, they'll spend more time thinking and generate more thinking tokens. You want to compress that time so that the impact on the end user is minimal. Because if you're going to make your users sit down and wait for a minute until an answer comes out, they may actually go to the competition and try to use the competitor's product rather than yours. So fast inference is highly conducive for reasoning models.
And so, what's next for Cerebras AI that slash inference? Is it just opening it up to more users? So right now, like you said, you guys are not set up for just swiping a credit card and letting people try it, right?
Correct. We're working on the credit card swipe, and more broadly, it's more than just credit card. It's serving kind of the broader community of independent developers. We are seeing insane demand, and we are trying to serve kind of the major businesses as a first step. So a lot of our customers are enterprises, and we are focusing on a few things. First of all, is basically ramping up capacity. If you recall, we are a real full stack provider.
Mhm.
We build the hardware, we actually deploy the hardware in data center, we operate the data center, and we operate the cloud stack on top of it. So we are very busy scaling that up. We have some exciting news that will come up soon about more data center capacity coming up, which is very exciting. And all of that capacity is actually already asked for.
And
So that's one.
where are the data centers?
All of our data centers currently are in North America.
Okay.
So if you use us, for example, with the DeepSeek, just know that your data doesn't travel to other countries where it may be used maliciously or not. It stays within the US and abides by US laws.
So even the people using you with Mistral, or that's North America.
Correct. Everything is North America.
Okay.
So that's one important thing. The other thing is, of course, building up more advanced machine learning capabilities on our service. A lot of it is around improving performance further, reducing latency further, and really keeping our edge, right? Keeping our 10x at least edge on NVIDIA-based acceleration. And we have a really fantastic roadmap toward that. And then there are the other things which people don't talk a lot about, but are super important. Reliability, operational excellence is really key for us, and we know it's key for us because it's key for our customers.
Isn't that slide number one for any AWS presentation? 99.99999.
Yes, so that's definitely something we're learning from AWS, and just personally, I've
So,
spent 5 years in Amazon, so heavily
so,
trained
so
in the culture.
to clarify, this inference service is not a general purpose cloud. It's basically designed so that you have some foundation model that you deploy and then you run inference, right? Correct?
Exactly. Our focus is very clear and very specific. We focus on providing the best experience in terms of performance, reliability, feature set for AI inference. And we try to keep our focus on that.
So you guys take care of the entire inference experience, right? So because a lot of our listeners, for example, are familiar with and use things like VLLM and things like that, right? So when they sign up with Cerebras, basically they're signing up for an end-to-end inference service.
That's correct. That's currently what we're offering. We're offering inference APIs, and we don't offer the VLLM style experience where you kind of run your own server stack on our hardware. Although it is something we look into, and I believe as we scale the service, that's probably kind of will go down the stack, if you will, to offer that as well.
Well, so at this point, I guess that begs the question, right? So if I have if I have the inference endpoint at Cerebras and they're taking care of everything, why why are you hearing people asking for the latter option where they have the VLLM option, for example?
I think there are always reasons for different companies or individuals to want to kind of mess around with the lower level details. As an example, some of the hyperscalers, right, they have enough scale and they have custom needs, so they want to customize the entire stack. And you are seeing companies, for example, even writing their own CUDA kernels, right, and writing their own server stacks. So there's always the use case for that. Although I believe with technology, typically, as technology advances and consolidates, people tend to just use the standard tooling, certain services rather than build their own. But yeah, some customers definitely have the need to fully customize the entire stack.
Cool. And so are you guys hiring?
We are hiring across the board from hardware through operations and of course in the inference stack as well. And if you want to join a rocket ship company and help build the best AI compute out there, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you and talk to you and explore the opportunities.
And this is not, are there remote only options?
The we don't offer remote only options. It's on an exception basis, so we definitely have some remote employees, but we tend to adopt the hybrid work model. We have offices in the Bay Area, in Toronto, in Bangalore, and typically most of the folks that join us work at least a few days a week out of one of our offices.
All right. And with that, thank you, Hagai.
Thanks, Ben.